Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're jumping right into something pretty interesting from Congress. It's H.R. 197.
That's right, the Lake Winnibigoshish Land Exchange Act of 2025. It might sound specific, but it really shows how these land deals work.
Exactly. You flagged this one, and it's a great window into those, behind-the-scenes processes.
So for this deep dive, we're looking straight at the bill text, H.R. 197 from the 119th Congress.
And our mission today.
Basically, to pull out the key info, understand this land swap in Minnesota's Chippewa National Forest, who's involved, what land we're talking about, and how it's supposed to actually happen.
Okay, so core idea, land exchange. Let's break down the main action here.
Right. So H.R. 197 basically gives the Secretary of Agriculture the green light.
Acting through the Forest Service.
Exactly, through the Forest Service. It allows them to do a land exchange with the Minnesota company. It's called Big Winnie Land and Timber, LLC, BWLT for short.
Gotcha. Federal land, trading hands with a private LLC. So what specific bits of land are we talking about?
Okay, so the federal government is looking to give up about 17.5 acres. It's in Itasca County, Minnesota, and it's shown as the federal parcel on a specific map in the bill. The map's called Hague Land Exchange, dated December 14th, 2023.
All right, 17.5 federal acres. And what's BWLT offering in return?
They're offering a larger piece, about 36.7 acres, also non-federal land, also in Itasca County.
Okay.
It's marked as the non-federal parcel on that very same map.
36.7 acres for 17.5. That difference definitely jumps out. More than double the size.
It does. You kind of wonder why, right? Valuation maybe, or other factors?
Yeah, we'll probably get into that.
So how's this exchange actually supposed to work? What's the process laid out?
The bill sets out a pretty clear path. First step, BWLT has to formally offer their land, the non-federal parcel, to the U.S.
Okay, they make the offer, then what?
Then the Secretary has a deadline. Within 1 year of that offer, the bill says the Secretary shall accept it.
So it sounds pretty mandatory, assuming conditions are met. Seems that way. And at the same time, the Secretary hands over the federal land title to BWLT and accepts the title for the non-federal land.
And there was something about road access.
Yes. Good point. The U.S. keeps an easement, basically a right-of-way, for road access to other national forest land that's west of the federal parcel they're giving up.
Okay, keeps access routes open. Now, this all sounds straightforward, but I imagine there are conditions, prerequisites.
Oh, definitely. Several key conditions need to be ticked off. A big one is title approval. The Secretary has to approve the title for that non-federal land.
Makes sense. The government needs to know it's getting clean ownership, no liens or weird claims down the road.
Exactly. No legal headaches later.
What else? What other hurdles are there?
Well, another major piece is the value, how the lands stack up against each other financially.
Right, the appraisal.
Yeah. If the federal land, the 17.5 acres, is appraised higher than the non-federal land,
The 36.7 acres.
right, then BWLT has to make up the difference with cash. A cash equalization payment to the U.S. government.
Standard procedure for these kinds of exchanges, usually. But what if it goes the other way? What if BWLT's land is worth more?
Now that's where it gets quite interesting. The bill specifically says if the non-federal land is valued higher, the U.S. does not pay BWLT the difference.
Really? So the government wouldn't equalize it?
Correct. And what's more, the bill states that this waived amount, the extra value the government receives, is legally considered a donation from BWLT.
So BWLT could potentially offer more valuable land and essentially donate the difference. That's noteworthy.
It is. It suggests maybe there's some strategic thinking there for BWLT, beyond just the land itself. Tax benefits, maybe? Goodwill? Hard to say just from the bill text.
Fascinating.
Yeah.
Okay, any other major conditions? You mentioned environmental checks.
Yes, absolutely. Before the Secretary can accept BWLT's land, BWLT has to conduct and complete a Phase I environmental site assessment.
Standard environmental checkup, basically. Look for contamination, that sort of thing.
Pretty much. It's environmental due diligence. Also, the whole exchange is subject to any valid existing rights like utility easements or mineral rights that might already exist on either property.
Okay.
And the Secretary also has the usual leeway to add other terms and conditions if they think it's necessary.
Right, some flexibility built in. So we've touched on valuation. How exactly do they figure out the dollar value of these lands?
The bill requires formal appraisals for both parcels.
Yeah.
And these can't just be done by anyone.
Needs to be official.
Yes. They have to use an independent, qualified appraiser, And importantly, both the Secretary and BWLT have to agree on who that appraiser is.
So mutual agreement on the appraiser, that sounds fair, avoids bias.
It aims for impartiality, yes.
And are there specific rules for how the appraisal itself is done, like standards they have to follow?
Absolutely. The bill is very specific here. It calls out two sets of standards. The Uniform Appraisal Standards for Federal Land Acquisitions, the Yellow Book often called, and the Uniform Standards of Professional Appraisal Practice, or USPAP.
Okay, so quite rigorous. They're using established federal and professional benchmarks.
Exactly. It ensures consistency and hopefully an accurate fair market value determination.
Seems like they're trying to make that part pretty solid.
Yeah.
Now, what about all the costs involved in actually making the transfer happen? Paperwork, fees, who pays for all that?
That's another really significant point in the bill. It states that BWLT, the private company, pays for all the closing costs.
All of them? Like what?
The bill lists them out. Title insurance, title searches, any inspection fees needed, escrow fees, attorney's fees, recording fees, the works.
Wow. That sounds like it could add up. That's a substantial commitment from BWLT.
It really is. It puts the financial load for executing the deal squarely on their side.
Does that include surveys too? Sometimes acreage needs to be verified precisely.
Yep, includes that too. The bill says surveys satisfactory to the Secretary are needed to pin down the exact acreages and legal descriptions. And guess who pays?
Let me guess.
BWLT.
You got it. BWLT covers the survey costs as well. Okay, so assuming this all goes through, appraisals done, conditions met, titles clear, the U.S. gets this roughly 37-acre parcel from BWLT. What happens to that land then?
The bill's quite clear here. Once the U.S. acquires it, that non-federal land gets added to the Chippewa National Forest.
So it becomes part of the National Forest System.
Correct. It'll be managed under all the same rules and regulations as the rest of the National Forest System lands. Essentially, it expands the public forest land.
Okay, that clarifies the end game for the land itself. Now, you mentioned that map earlier, the Hague Land Exchange map.
Yep.
How important is that compared to, say, the written legal descriptions?
It's actually critical. The Secretary is supposed to finalize the map and the legal descriptions soon after the act becomes law. But here's the key part.
Yeah.
If there's ever a conflict or discrepancy between what the map shows and what the written legal description says, the map wins.
The map takes precedence. That's interesting. Usually you think of the legal text as being paramount.
In this case, the visual seems to hold the trump card, possibly to avoid ambiguity about boundaries on the ground. The bill does allow for fixing minor errors, though, if both sides agree.
And people can see this map.
Yes, the final map and the legal descriptions are supposed to be made publicly available, filed in the appropriate Forest Service offices for anyone to look at.
Good for transparency. We should also probably mention the bill's actual name again.
Right, its short title is the Lake Winnibigoshish Land Exchange Act of 2025. Gives it a handle.
And where is this bill right now? What's its status in Congress?
Well, according to the bill text itself, which is usually updated as it moves, it passed the House of Representatives back on January 21st, 2025.
Okay, so cleared the House.
Then the very next day, January 22nd, it was received in the Senate and sent over to the Senate Committee on Agriculture, Nutrition, and Forestry.
So it's currently sitting in that Senate committee waiting for review or action there.
That appears to be its current status, yes.
Yeah. All right, let's try and wrap this up then. We've taken a close look at this proposed land swap near Lake Winnibigoshish in Minnesota.
Yeah, the federal government potentially trading about 17.5 acres to this company, BWLT.
In exchange for about 36.7 acres that would then become part of the Chippewa National Forest.
Exactly. And it's not just a straight swap. There are hoops to jump through.
Right, like the title approvals, the potential cash payment from BWLT if needed.
Or that interesting detail about the waived payment being a donation if BWLT's land is worth more.
And the environmental assessment that BWLT has to do first.
And don't forget, BWLT is footing the bill for all the closing and survey costs. That's a pretty big takeaway.
It really is. It highlights the financial side of these deals.
You know, what stands out to me is just how detailed this bill is. It really gets into the weeds, the appraisal rules, the map priority, the environmental checks, what happens to the land after.
Yeah, it's not just a suggestion, it's a procedure.
It really underscores that even a seemingly straightforward land exchange like this involves a lot of complexity, especially when federal land is involved. Lots of checks and balances.
So as we finish up, what's maybe a final thought for people to chew on? Something beyond just the mechanics we've discussed.
Well, it makes you think about the why, doesn't it? Beyond the acreage and appraisal numbers, what are the deeper reasons for this specific exchange?
You mean like the ecological value?
Yeah, what's the long-term ecological gain for the Chippewa National Forest with this particular 37-acre piece? Does it connect habitats, improve water quality, enhance recreation, things like that?
And from the other side.
And conversely, what's the strategic value for Big Winnie land and timber? What do they gain from the 17.5 acres they receive or from the exchange itself? Thinking about those underlying motivations on both sides might give a fuller picture of why this specific piece of legislation exists and what its real impact might be.